"SHH, I need to make love." The rancher satisfied her, and then he had a wife backslash. She inhaled deeply, letting the calmness of the countryside fill her lungs. Life on the ranch was never easy, but she had grown used to the quiet rhythm of the days, the rising sun, the endless chores, and the sense of freedom that came with wide-open spaces. She loved the work, even when it was hard. There was something satisfying about taking care of the land, about feeling connected to the soil beneath her feet, the wind on her face, and the animals she had tended for years. Emma moved with purpose, her boots crunching softly against the gravel as she walked toward the barn. She had already fed the chickens and let the horses out to graze, but there was always more to do. Today, she needed to check the fences along the northern edge of the property. That part of the ranch was older, and the wooden posts often wobbled in the wind or rotted over time. A broken fence could mean trouble, stray animals, lost crops, or worse. She carried a hammer and a small bag of nails, her long hair tied back in a loose braid to keep it from getting in her way. As she approached the edge of the field, she noticed something unusual. A truck had pulled up near the fence, dust swirling around its tires. Emma squinted, shading her eyes from the bright sun. A man was stepping down from the truck, tall, broad-shouldered, and moving with an easy confidence. His shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing strong arms that suggested a life spent outdoors. His face was partially hidden under the brim of a wide hat, but his presence was impossible to ignore. He looked like he belonged to the land itself, someone who understood its secrets and rhythms. For a moment, Emma froze. She didn't usually have visitors, especially not strangers wandering onto her property. But there was something about him that didn't feel threatening. He smiled politely as he approached, and Emma felt a strange flutter in her chest. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm and steady. "I hope I'm not intruding. I'm Jake. I manage the neighboring ranch." Emma relaxed slightly, offering a polite nod. "Emma," she said, "you're fine. Just checking the fences this morning." She tried to sound casual, but her pulse was quickening for reasons she didn't quite understand. Jake's eyes swept over the fence, noticing the gaps and loose boards. "Looks like you've got some work to do," he said, gesturing toward the broken sections. "Need a hand?" Emma hesitated. She had always handled the work on her own and prided herself on her independence, but something about Jake's calm confidence made her pause. She found herself nodding. "Sure, if you don't mind." Together they walked along the fence line. As they worked, hammering posts and securing loose boards, the conversation started cautiously. They talked about the land, the weather, and the challenges of ranch life. But gradually, the conversation became lighter, filled with laughter and easy teasing. Emma found herself enjoying his company more than she expected. He was knowledgeable, helpful, and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions. There was a moment when their hands brushed as they passed a hammer back and forth. It was a small, fleeting touch, but it sent a shiver down Emma's spine. She looked up at him, catching his eyes for just a moment before looking away, feeling her cheeks warm. Jake didn't comment on it, but she noticed the faint smile on his lips. There was a quiet electricity between them, a subtle tension that neither wanted to name yet. By the time they finished repairing the last section of the fence, the sun was higher in the sky, casting golden light across the fields. Emma wiped the sweat from her forehead and leaned against the fence post, taking a deep breath. "Thank you," she said softly. "I appreciate your help." Jake nodded, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than necessary. "Any time," he said. "It's not every day I get to work with someone who knows the land as well as you do." Emma felt a strange mix of pride and embarrassment at the compliment. She had spent years mastering the rhythms of the ranch, learning how to care for the animals, the crops, and the fences. And yet, hearing it acknowledged by someone else, especially someone like Jake, made her feel noticed. For the next few days, Jake continued to show up around the ranch, always under the pretext of checking on his own property or offering advice. Emma found herself anticipating his visits, feeling a flutter of excitement whenever she saw his truck approaching. They would exchange jokes, share stories about life on the ranch, and occasionally their hands would touch in passing, light, accidental but electric. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky and the fields glowed orange and pink, Emma and Jake found themselves sitting on the porch of the barn, taking a break after a long day of work. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the sounds of crickets, rustling leaves, and the distant lowing of cows. Emma watched the way the light played across his face, the way his eyes reflected the fading sunlight. Without thinking, she leaned slightly closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "SHH, I need to make love." The words startled even her. She had never spoken like this before, not so openly, not so boldly. But there was something in the moment, something raw and intimate, that made it impossible to hold back. Jake's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. He didn't respond with words, but his hand brushed gently against hers, a silent acknowledgement of the feelings they both knew were there. It was a moment suspended in time, filled with desire, curiosity, and an unspoken connection that neither could deny. That night, as Emma lay in her small bedroom, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Every glance, every touch, every whispered word replayed in her mind. She had always been independent, cautious with her heart, but Jake had stirred something within her that she couldn't ignore. She felt alive, exhilarated and nervous all at once. At the same time, she knew that things were complicated. There was an intensity to their connection that could not be ignored, but there were also boundaries, rules of life that they both had to respect. She wondered what would come next, how they would navigate this new, delicate tension between them. But for now, she allowed herself to savor the feelings, the anticipation, and the strange, thrilling possibility of what might unfold. As the night deepened and the stars filled the sky above the ranch, Emma fell asleep with a sense of both excitement and uncertainty. Life on the ranch was hard, full of routines and responsibilities, but it was also unpredictable, full of surprises and moments that could change everything in an instant. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that something had shifted that day, something that would stay with her forever. And deep down, she knew that her encounter with Jake was only the beginning of a story that was far from over. Days passed after that quiet evening on the porch, but the memory of it lingered in Emma's mind. Every time she walked through the fields, checked the fences, or tended to the animals, she thought of Jake. The way his eyes had met hers, the gentle brush of his hand, and the quiet warmth in his smile. It was strange and thrilling, this feeling that had quietly crept into her heart. She was used to the solitude of ranch life, but now, the thought of seeing him brought a flutter of anticipation she could not ignore. Jake continued to visit, always with a reason, checking a neighboring field, offering advice on a stubborn gate, or simply stopping by to borrow tools. Emma tried to act casual, pretending it was no different from having a neighbor pass through. Yet every glance, every accidental touch, felt charged with electricity. Even the simplest moments, like handing him a hammer or walking beside him along the fence line, carried an unspoken tension that neither of them wanted to name. One afternoon, the air was hot, heavy with the scent of sun-warmed grass. Emma was repairing a section of fencing near the creek when she noticed Jake approaching from the path. He waved, his hat shading his face from the glaring sunlight. She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Need a hand," he called, though it was hardly necessary. Emma shook her head, brushing sweat from her brow. "I've got it mostly, but thanks." He grinned, leaning against the fence post, watching her work. "You make it look easy," Emma laughed softly. "Easy? You've got to be kidding. This is hard work. Anyone who says ranch life is simple doesn't know what they're talking about." Jake's smile softened and he took a step closer. "Maybe. but you seem to handle it well." His gaze lingered on her for a moment that felt longer than it should. She felt her cheeks warm under the weight of it, her heart beating faster than the afternoon sun should have made it. They worked side by side, fixing broken posts and tightening wire, their movements almost instinctively in sync. Occasionally, their hands brushed, and a shiver ran through Emma. She told herself it was the heat, the exertion, anything but the obvious attraction between them. But deep down, she knew it was more. By late afternoon, they had finished the work and the ranch seemed peaceful. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. Jake leaned on the fence post, watching Emma with a contemplative look. "You're different from anyone I've met," he said quietly. "There's a strength about you, and yet something tender too." Emma paused, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to people noticing the softer parts of her personality, the vulnerability she tried to keep hidden beneath her independence. "I've had to be strong," she admitted. "Life on the ranch doesn't leave much choice, but tender, maybe." "I suppose there's a little of that too." Jake nodded, his eyes softening. "I think that's what makes you captivating." Emma felt her breath catch. The words were simple, but they carried weight, a warmth that made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. She looked away, suddenly conscious of the distance between them, though it wasn't far at all. As the sun finally began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they both sat on the fence for a moment, simply enjoying the quiet. The creek gurgled nearby, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. The world felt suspended, as if it were just the two of them in that endless expanse of fields. "You make me forget everything else," Jake said quietly. "For a while at least, the work, the responsibilities, everything." Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. There was a raw honesty in his words that resonated deep inside her. She wanted to say something, to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she let the silence stretch, letting the moment hold them both in its quiet intensity. Over the next week, their encounters became more frequent. Sometimes it was under the guise of fixing a fence, sometimes helping with the horses or checking the water troughs. Every meeting, no matter how mundane the reason, carried the subtle thrill of anticipation. They laughed more easily now, their conversations flowing naturally, mixing work with personal stories about life on the ranch, childhood memories, and dreams for the future. Emma found herself looking forward to Jake's visits, feeling a warmth in her chest whenever she caught sight of him on the horizon. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, they found themselves alone near the barn again. The sky was painted in deep purples and golds, and the air smelled of grass and evening dew. Emma leaned against the wooden post, tired but content. Jake stood beside her, silent, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear. "You know," he said softly, "I didn't expect to feel this way, about anyone, but you've changed something in me." Emma's heart raced. She didn't know what to say, and for a moment the only sound was the wind through the trees and the faint chirping of crickets. Finally she whispered, "I feel it too." Jake looked at her, his expression a mixture of surprise and relief. The tension between them seemed to thrum in the air, pulling them closer without a single word. Emma felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. She had always been careful with her heart, but Jake stirred something wild inside her, a desire to take a chance, to embrace something she had never experienced before. Slowly, almost hesitantly, their hands found each other. The touch was electric, a confirmation of feelings that had been growing silently over days and weeks. Neither spoke, letting the moment stretch, savoring the connection that seemed to pulse between them. As night fell, they finally parted, but the sense of anticipation remained, heavier and more intimate than ever. Emma returned to her small cabin, feeling a strange combination of excitement and worry. The feelings for Jake were strong, undeniable, but she sensed there were complications she hadn't yet discovered. And yet, she couldn't deny the thrill of the attraction, the pull that seemed to draw them together like magnets. In the following days, their encounters became even more daring, filled with lingering touches and meaningful glances. Every shared smile, every quiet conversation was layered with unspoken desire. Emma found herself daydreaming about him in the middle of chores, feeling a warmth in her chest that made even the toughest tasks seem lighter. The tension was palpable, yet both were careful to respect boundaries, savoring the closeness without rushing into anything. One afternoon, while fixing a gate near the barn, Emma paused, feeling the intensity of their connection rise again. She turned to Jake, her eyes searching his. I don't know where this is going," she said softly, "but I can't stop thinking about you." Jake's gaze softened. "Neither can I," he admitted, "but we have to be careful. Life on the ranch, it's not simple, and there are things I haven't told you yet." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She felt a mix of fear and curiosity. There was a sense of anticipation, a knowing that their story was only beginning, and that the days ahead would be filled with challenges, emotions, and discoveries that neither could predict. As the sun dipped below the horizon once more, casting long shadows over the fields, they stood together, side by side. The connection between them had grown stronger, deeper, and more undeniable. Emma felt a thrill of hope, excitement, and caution all at once. The ranch was a place of hard work and endless responsibilities, but it had also become a place where emotions ran deep, where desire and connection could flourish in ways neither had expected. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she replayed every moment of the day, the laughter, the touches, the stolen glances. She knew that her life was changing in ways she couldn't yet understand, that the bond between her and Jake was becoming something powerful and irresistible. And while the future was uncertain, she felt ready to face it, embracing the intensity of the emotions that had quietly taken root in her heart. For the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't just about the land, the animals, or the endless chores. She imagined moments of closeness, shared laughter, and quiet evenings under the stars with Jake by her side. The anticipation of what could be filled her with a mixture of hope and excitement, leaving her restless but exhilarated. And so the days continued, each one deepening the connection between them, building tension and desire, while the ranch remained a constant, grounding presence. Emma had entered a new chapter of her life, one filled with complexity, emotion, and the thrilling uncertainty of love that had quietly begun to bloom. The days on the ranch continued with their usual rhythm, early mornings, long hours in the fields, and the quiet satisfaction of work well done. Yet beneath the surface, Emma felt a tension that she could no longer ignore. Her thoughts kept drifting to Jake, to the stolen moments they shared, and the growing intensity of their connection. Each time she saw him, her heart would skip a beat, and a mix of excitement and unease settled in her chest. It was during one late afternoon, as Emma was repairing a section of fence near the creek, that the first wave of doubt began to creep in. Jake arrived, as usual, carrying his tools and a calm smile, but there was something different in his eyes today. Hesitation, maybe even guilt. Emma noticed immediately, though she didn't comment, letting him work silently beside her. Their hands brushed occasionally, sending sparks of electricity through her, but there was a shadow in his gaze that unsettled her. After a long silence, Jake finally spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have mentioned from the beginning." Emma froze, her heart pounding. A dozen possibilities ran through her mind, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What is it?" she asked softly, trying to keep her voice steady. Jake took a deep breath, avoiding her gaze for a moment. I have a wife." The words landed between them like a stone thrown into still water. Emma's hands tightened on the hammer she was holding, her mind struggling to process what she had just heard. "You what?" she asked, disbelief and shock warring inside her. She had felt a growing bond, a desire she hadn't allowed herself to fully embrace, and now it seemed to shatter in an instant. Jake looked at her, his eyes filled with regret. "I never meant for this to happen. I didn't plan for us. But when I met you, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, and I couldn't ignore it. I should have been honest from the start, and I'm sorry." Emma felt a rush of emotions: betrayal, sadness, anger, and a deep, aching disappointment. She had trusted him, allowed herself to feel something she rarely gave anyone, and now it seemed that trust had been misplaced. The ranch, usually a place of comfort and stability, felt suddenly heavy and confining. "I trusted you," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I allowed myself to care about you, and you've been hiding this." Jake lowered his eyes, unable to meet her gaze. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you without losing everything." For a long moment, silence hung between them, filled with the sounds of the creek flowing and the distant lowing of cows. Emma felt her chest tighten, the warmth and excitement she had felt in previous days replaced by confusion and heartache. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but she also wanted answers, truth, clarity, and honesty. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked finally, her voice stronger though her hands shook. "Why let things get this far?" Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. I thought I could handle it, keep it separate, but feelings don't work that way. I didn't want to hurt you, but I see now that I already have." Emma turned away, feeling the weight of the betrayal press down on her. She had imagined a future with him, a connection that felt real, genuine, and intimate. And now that vision was crumbling, leaving her to question everything she had felt and believed. The ranch, once a place of freedom, now felt like a cage, trapping her in a web of emotions she didn't know how to untangle. Over the next few days, Emma tried to maintain her usual routine, throwing herself into work to avoid thinking about Jake. She mended fences, tended to the animals, and walked the fields with determination, yet her mind constantly wandered back to him. Every memory, every glance, every touch replayed in her mind, and she realized just how deeply she had allowed herself to care. Jake continued to visit, though now their encounters were strained, filled with awkward silences and unspoken tension. Emma could see the guilt in his eyes, and she couldn't deny that she still felt drawn to him, despite everything. It was a confusing mix of anger, longing, and sadness, a cocktail of emotions that left her feeling both alive and exhausted. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, Jake approached her as she sat on the porch, wiping sweat from her forehead. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the fields. "Emma," he began, his voice tentative, "I know I've made a mistake. I know this complicates everything. But I need you to understand that what I feel for you, it's real. I can't ignore it, even if I wanted to." Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and confusion. "Real? How can it be real when you've been hiding the truth? How can I trust anything you say?" Jake's expression softened. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything right now. I just wanted you to know the truth. I couldn't keep pretending any longer." Emma took a deep breath, her hands gripping the edges of the wooden bench. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, though she refused to let them fall. "I need time," she said quietly. "Time to think, to understand, to decide what this means for me, for us." Jake nodded, a mixture of relief and sorrow in his eyes. "Take all the time you need. I'll respect whatever you decide." The following days were some of the hardest Emma had ever experienced. She spent long hours alone in the fields, walking among the crops and animals, trying to make sense of her emotions. She realized that her feelings for Jake were genuine, but they were tangled with disappointment and betrayal. She had allowed herself to hope, to dream, and now she had to navigate the reality of the situation. At night, she would sit by the window of her cabin, staring at the stars and thinking about what had happened. She reflected on the quiet moments with Jake, the laughter, the shared work, the small touches that had meant so much. And she also reflected on the revelation of his marriage, the trust that had been broken, and the choices that lay ahead. Emma understood that life on the ranch had always been about hard work, responsibility, and resilience. But now she realized it was also about emotional strength, the ability to face disappointment, to make difficult decisions, and to protect her own heart while navigating the complexities of human connection. One afternoon, while feeding the horses, Emma found herself thinking about forgiveness. She didn't know if she could forgive Jake, or if she even wanted to, but she knew she had to find a way to move forward. The ranch demanded her focus, and the animals relied on her care. She couldn't let her heartache consume her entirely. There was work to be done and life to live, even amid emotional turmoil. Meanwhile, Jake respected her space, though he remained nearby, offering assistance only when necessary. He didn't try to rush her, didn't press for explanations, and didn't ask for immediate forgiveness. His presence was a quiet reminder of what could have been, a mixture of hope and pain that Emma couldn't fully ignore. Gradually, Emma began to find her footing again. She threw herself into her routines, repairing fences, tending to crops, and caring for the animals with renewed focus. Each day, the sharp sting of betrayal softened slightly, replaced by a sense of determination and resilience. She realized that her strength didn't come only from hard work. It also came from her ability to confront difficult emotions, to face disappointment, and to make choices that honored her own well-being. And yet, despite the hurt and confusion, she couldn't deny the lingering connection with Jake. It was a quiet, persistent thread woven into the fabric of her days, a reminder of desire, of shared moments, and of the complexity of human relationships. She knew that her story with him was far from over, that the days ahead would bring challenges, decisions, and emotional growth that neither of them could fully anticipate. By the time the sun set on the ranch each evening, Emma had come to a fragile understanding. Life was full of contradictions, of joy and disappointment, of connection and loss. She had been drawn to Jake, had felt a bond that was real and powerful, and now she had to navigate the consequences of that bond. It was not an easy path, but it was one she was determined to walk, with honesty, strength, and a willingness to face the truth. And so the ranch continued its quiet rhythm, the rising sun, the labor in the fields, and the wide-open skies above. Yet beneath the routine, a story of desire, betrayal, and emotional growth was unfolding, shaping Emma's heart and teaching her lessons she would carry with her forever. She didn't yet know what the future held, but she understood one thing clearly. She was strong, capable, and ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant confronting pain, disappointment, and the complexity of human emotions. Days turned into weeks, and Emma found herself grappling with emotions she had never experienced so intensely before. The revelation of Jake's marriage had left her shaken, but she realized that running away from her feelings wasn't an option. She had to face the situation, understand the truth, and decide what was best for her heart and her life. Life on the ranch demanded clarity, not confusion, and she knew that this included the complicated emotions surrounding Jake. One warm afternoon, Emma found herself walking along the northern edge of the ranch, the same path where she had first met Jake weeks ago. She felt the wind in her hair and the sun on her back, drawing strength from the familiar landscape around her. The fields stretched endlessly, a reminder of her independence and resilience. But the weight of her emotions made the open spaces feel small, heavy with anticipation and uncertainty. She spotted Jake's truck parked near the fence, and her heart skipped a beat. She had not intended to confront him today, but seeing him there felt inevitable. Taking a deep breath, she approached him, each step filled with determination. Jake looked up, sensing her approach. His face reflected a mix of hope and apprehension, as if he knew this conversation would shape the course of their lives. "Emma," he began softly, I didn't expect you to come today. "I needed to see you," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We need to talk, Jake, about everything." He nodded, gesturing toward the edge of the field where they could speak privately. They walked together, the tension between them palpable. Finally, they stopped under the shade of an old oak tree, the golden afternoon light filtering through the leaves, casting dappled shadows across the ground. Emma turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "I need honesty, Jake, all of it, no more secrets." Jake's shoulders sagged slightly. "I promise, Emma, I won't hide anything from you." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then Emma spoke, her voice trembling with emotion but filled with strength. "How long have you been married?" Jake swallowed hard. 10 years. The words felt heavy as they left his lips. "It's complicated. My wife and I, we've drifted apart over the years. We don't live together, and our relationship has been more of an arrangement than anything else for a long time." Emma listened carefully, her mind racing. She could feel the honesty in his voice, but it didn't erase the betrayal. She had trusted him, allowed herself to care, and now she had to process the reality of the situation. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly, trying to keep her emotions in check. "Why let things get this far if your heart wasn't truly free?" Jake looked down, shame and regret evident in his eyes. "I was afraid of losing you, afraid of hurting you. And I thought maybe I could keep my personal life separate. I see now that was wrong. I should have been upfront from the beginning." Emma felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and lingering affection. She had allowed herself to hope, to imagine a future with him, and now that hope felt fragile, almost broken. Yet she also recognized the complexity of human relationships, the way life could create unexpected situations that weren't easy to navigate. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice softening. "I care about you, Jake, I do, but I can't ignore this. I need to know where we stand. I need to know if there's a future here or if I should let go before it hurts even more." Jake stepped closer, his hand brushing gently against hers. "Emma, what we have is real. The connection between us, it's undeniable. I've never felt anything like it. I don't want to lose you, but I also understand if you need space. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that my feelings are genuine." Emma looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. She could see the honesty there, the vulnerability, and the remorse. And yet, she knew that feelings alone couldn't erase the reality of his marriage. She had to think carefully, weighing her emotions against what was right for her own heart. Over the next several days, Emma spent time reflecting on her choices. She walked the fields, tending to the animals, and allowed herself to confront her feelings. She realized that love and desire, no matter how intense, could not override trust and integrity. She had to decide whether to continue pursuing something complicated or to protect her heart by stepping back. During this time, Jake respected her space. He didn't press for answers or attempt to manipulate her feelings. Instead, he offered support quietly, helping with chores when needed and maintaining a respectful distance. His actions demonstrated a willingness to honor her decisions, even as he hoped for reconciliation. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and gold, Emma found herself sitting by the creek, watching the water flow over smooth stones. She thought about the connection she shared with Jake, the laughter, the shared work, the quiet moments under the stars. She also thought about the betrayal, the hidden truths, and the choices she needed to make. It became clear to her that she had two options: to let go entirely, cutting off the bond that had grown between them, or to confront the situation with honesty, establishing boundaries, and seeing if a future could exist despite the complications. She knew that whatever decision she made, it would shape her emotional landscape and define the next chapter of her life. The next day, Emma decided it was time to face Jake once more. She found him near the barn, checking on the water troughs for the animals. She approached him, her steps deliberate, her heart steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Jake," she began, her voice calm but firm, We need to figure this out. I can't keep going like this, wondering, hoping, questioning. I need clarity." He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "I understand, Emma. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it." Emma took a deep breath. "I want honesty, full honesty, no half-truths. Tell me everything about your life, your marriage, and what you want moving forward." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "I will. I want to be truthful with you, Emma, because you deserve that. My marriage, it's complicated, yes, but my feelings for you are real. I care about you deeply, and I want to explore what we have if you're willing." Emma listened carefully, weighing his words against the reality she had observed. She realized that while his honesty was a step forward, the choice to continue this relationship rested with her. She had to decide if her heart could trust him fully, if she could navigate the complexities without losing herself in the process. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice steady and resolute. "I care about you too, Jake. I won't deny that. But I need boundaries, clarity, and respect for my feelings. I won't be hurt again because of hidden truths. If we are to move forward, it has to be with honesty, patience, and mutual understanding." Jake's shoulders relaxed, a sense of relief evident on his face. "I understand, Emma, and I promise from now on complete honesty. No more secrets." They stood together in the fading light, the ranch stretching endlessly around them, a place of hard work, resilience, and now difficult decisions. Emma felt a mixture of hope and caution, a recognition that desire alone could not sustain a relationship, but that honesty, respect, and emotional strength could create a foundation worth exploring. Over the following days, they worked together more deliberately, rebuilding not just fences, but trust and communication. Emma realized that the bond they shared, though complicated, had the potential to grow into something meaningful if nurtured carefully. She allowed herself to feel again, but this time with awareness, protecting her heart while remaining open to the possibilities. Emma also reflected on her own strength, recognizing that facing difficult truths required courage. She was not simply a woman living on a ranch. She was someone capable of navigating complex emotions, someone who could stand firm in her values while embracing the unexpected. The ranch, the wide-open fields, and the endless skies became a metaphor for her life, difficult at times, unpredictable but filled with opportunity, growth, and resilience. By the end of Part 4, Emma and Jake had reached a fragile understanding. They acknowledged the challenges of his marriage, the mistakes of the past, and the importance of honesty and boundaries. And while the future remained uncertain, both were committed to exploring their connection with care, respect, and patience, understanding that love and trust required time, effort, and unwavering truthfulness. The days on the ranch had settled into a new rhythm, one that was different from before. The tension that had once hovered between Emma and Jake was still present, but now it carried a quiet understanding. They had faced the truths of their situation, the hidden marriage, the feelings of betrayal, and the complexity of human emotions, and emerged with a tentative but honest connection. The ranch, with its wide-open fields and endless skies, had become a place not just of work, but of reflection, growth, and careful hope. Emma woke early one morning, as was her habit, the sun just peeking over the horizon. She moved through her chores with a sense of calm determination, each step purposeful, each task a reminder of her independence. Yet there was a quiet excitement beneath the routine, a sense that something was shifting, that the future held possibilities she had not allowed herself to imagine fully before. Jake arrived soon after, his truck kicking up a trail of dust along the path. He waved when he saw her, and she smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the morning sun. They worked together in comfortable silence at first, repairing a section of fence near the pasture, their hands occasionally brushing as they passed tools or tightened posts. The touches were light but meaningful, a quiet acknowledgement of the trust and connection that had begun to grow between them. During a break, They sat on the edge of the barn porch, watching the cattle graze in the early light. Jake turned to her, his eyes sincere and steady. "Emma, I know the past weeks have been complicated. I can't change what's happened, but I want you to know that I am committed to being honest from now on. Completely honest. No secrets, no half-truths." Emma nodded, her hands resting on her knees. "I know, Jake. And I appreciate that. I've been thinking a lot about what I want, what I need. I care about you, but I also need to protect my heart. I can't allow myself to be hurt again." Jake's expression softened. "I understand. I don't expect things to be perfect overnight, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust." They fell into a comfortable silence, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cows, the rustling of leaves, the distant hum of the creek. Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in weeks, a feeling that, despite the challenges, they could create something real and lasting together. Over the next several days, their connection deepened in quiet, meaningful ways. They continued to work side by side on the ranch, but now there was laughter and lightness in their interactions. Emma found herself sharing more about her thoughts, her dreams, and even the small fears she had kept to herself. Jake listened patiently, offering support without judgment, and she began to see not just a companion in him, but someone who could be a true partner in life. One afternoon, while tending to the horses, Emma paused to look at Jake. He was adjusting a water trough, the sun casting warm light across his face. For a moment, she felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, affection, and the lingering memory of what had drawn her to him in the first place. She realized that while the past could not be undone, it had led them to this point, to a deeper understanding of each other and themselves. "Jake," she said softly, approaching him, "I've been thinking about us, about everything that's happened. And I think I'm ready to move forward, not blindly but carefully, with honesty and patience like we talked about." Jake looked up, hope and relief shining in his eyes. "Emma, you have no idea how happy that makes me. I promise I'll do everything I can to honor that trust and make this work." They spent the rest of the afternoon working together, sharing stories, laughter, and small moments of closeness. Each gesture, each word, reinforced the bond that had survived doubt and disappointment. Emma felt her heart opening again, cautiously, but with a sense of excitement for what the future could hold. As the weeks passed, their relationship settled into a pattern of steady growth. They learned to communicate openly, to navigate the challenges of life on the ranch, and to respect each other's boundaries while nurturing their connection. Emma realized that love was not only about desire, but also about trust, patience, and shared effort. She felt proud of her own resilience and grateful for Jake's willingness to be honest and present. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, Jake and Emma sat together on a small hill overlooking the ranch. The field stretched endlessly below them, bathed in the soft glow of dusk. Emma leaned against him, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. "I've never felt this peaceful," she said quietly. "Even with everything that happened, I feel like we're in the right place now. Like this is where we're meant to be, at least for now." Jake kissed the top of her head gently. "I feel the same way, Emma. We've been through so much, but I believe this is just the beginning of something good. We'll take it one day at a time together." As night fell and the stars appeared, Emma felt a deep sense of contentment. Life on the ranch was still challenging, filled with work and responsibility, but it was also filled with connection, laughter, and love that had been carefully rebuilt. She knew there would still be obstacles ahead, moments of doubt and difficulty, but she also knew that they could face them together. In the following months, their bond continued to strengthen. They shared quiet mornings feeding the animals, long afternoons repairing fences and working the land, and evenings watching the sun set over the fields. Each day brought small acts of trust, understanding, and affection, reinforcing the foundation they had built. Emma felt her heart open fully, not recklessly, but with awareness and care. She also realized that her journey was not only about Jake. It was about her own growth, her ability to navigate complex emotions, and her courage in facing difficult truths. She had learned the importance of honesty, resilience, and self-respect, and she carried those lessons forward in every interaction, every decision, and every moment of her life. One day, while sitting on the porch of her cabin, Emma reflected on the journey she had taken. She remembered the excitement and tension of their first encounters, the shock of betrayal, and the careful process of rebuilding trust. She felt gratitude for the lessons learned, and for the chance to experience a love that, though complicated, had ultimately brought growth, understanding, and joy. Jake joined her, carrying a small basket of freshly picked vegetables from the garden. He smiled as he handed her the basket, his eyes filled with warmth. "Look at us," he said lightly, "still working hard, still figuring out life, and somehow still together." Emma laughed softly, the sound blending with the gentle evening breeze. "Yes, still together. And stronger, I think. Stronger because we face the hard parts, not just the easy ones." They sat together in silence for a while, the stars twinkling above, the fields stretching into the night. In that quiet moment, Emma realized that life, much like the ranch, was a mix of hard work, patience, and unexpected beauty. She had learned to navigate challenges, embrace her feelings with care, and trust in her own strength. And she had found in Jake a partner who was willing to walk beside her, honestly and faithfully, through the ups and downs. As the night deepened, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. She knew that love wasn't always simple, and that relationships required effort, honesty, and understanding. But she also knew that she was capable of facing these challenges, of growing through them, and of embracing the happiness that came from genuine connection. And so, life on the ranch continued. The mornings brought chores and work, the afternoons brought laughter and shared effort, and the evenings brought quiet reflection and closeness. Emma and Jake had navigated the storm of desire, betrayal, and honesty, and had emerged with a bond that was real, meaningful, and full of potential. Emma looked out over the fields one last time that evening, taking in the endless sky, the soft glow of the setting sun, and the steady presence of Jake beside her. She felt gratitude, hope, and love, emotions carefully balanced with awareness and resilience. She had faced the challenges of the heart and had chosen to move forward with strength, honesty, and courage. And in that moment, she understood that life, much like the ranch, was not just about surviving, but about thriving, finding beauty in hard work, connection in unexpected places, and love that was built on trust, patience, and shared growth. For Emma, the journey had been long and complicated, but it had led her to a place of clarity, understanding, and genuine happiness. And as she stood beside Jake, watching the stars appear one by one, she knew that the story of their lives was just beginning, a story of resilience, honesty, and love that had endured and grown stronger with time.